It was a crisp autumn evening when Luke, with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, announced his intention to propose to Ella. We were gathered in our modest living room, the warm glow of the lamps casting a comforting light on our faces. Luke's eyes sparkled as he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of his heartfelt decision. "I've decided to ask Ella to marry me," Luke declared, his words hanging in the air like a promise. His gaze was fixed on me, seeking my approval. "I'm going to ask her this weekend." I felt a swell of pride. Luke had always been determined and ambitious, and seeing him ready to take this step was a testament to his character. I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "That's wonderful, Luke. Ella is a lovely woman. I'm sure she'll be thrilled." The weekend came quickly, and we found ourselves at Ella's family home. The house was grander than I had anticipated, a reflection of Robert's success in the retail industry. The opulence of the surroundings made me feel somewhat out of place, but I maintained my composure, determined to make a good impression. As we entered the elegantly decorated living room, Robert and Margaret greeted us warmly. Robert, a towering figure with an air of authority, extended a firm handshake. Margaret, with her warm smile and gentle demeanor, offered us a cordial welcome. We settled into plush armchairs, the conversation flowing naturally at first. Luke and Ella's story was recounted with a mix of nostalgia and affection. It was when we transitioned to discussing the engagement that things took an unexpected turn. Robert's face hardened slightly as Luke mentioned the proposal. "So, Luke, what do you do for a living?" he asked, his tone casual but edged with curiosity. "I run a small tech company," Luke responded, his pride evident. "And your father?" Robert turned to me, his gaze scrutinizing. "I'm retired," I said, trying to sound as casual as possible. "I spent most of my career working in various roles, but I never had the opportunity for higher education." The shift in Robert's demeanor was immediate. His smile faltered, replaced by a cold, calculating look. "I see," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "And you've come to ask for my daughter's hand in marriage." Before I could respond, Robert's expression became more dismissive. "Well, Luke, it's clear you're not quite on the same level as our family. And your father?" He trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. Luke's face flushed with anger. "That's not fair, Robert. My father has worked hard all his life. We came here with respect and sincerity." Robert's response was sharp and dismissive. "Respect is earned, not given. And from where I'm standing, neither of you has proven anything." The tension in the room was palpable. I tried to diffuse the situation, but Robert's condescension only seemed to escalate. "Robert, please," Margaret interjected, trying to calm him. "Let's not turn this into an argument." But Robert was unmoved. His anger boiled over, and he struck Luke across the face, sending him stumbling backward. The room fell into stunned silence. Ella gasped, rushing to Luke's side. "Robert!" Margaret cried out, her voice filled with horror. "What have you done?" Robert's face was a mask of fury and regret, but he said nothing. The confrontation had reached a boiling point, and the atmosphere was thick with hostility. Luke, his face red and his eyes filled with pain, glared at Robert. "I won't stand for this. If this is how you treat someone who loves your daughter, then I don't want your approval." With that, we left the house in silence, the weight of the confrontation settling heavily on our shoulders. The evening had been marred by Robert's arrogance and violence, a stark reminder of the challenges we would face in merging our families. As we drove home, Luke's silence was heavy with disappointment and hurt. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice gentle as I glanced at him. "I'm fine," Luke replied, though his tone was brittle. "But I'm not going to let this stop me. Ella and I will find a way." His resolve was admirable, and as we continued our journey home, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of determination to support my son through the trials that lay ahead. The battle for respect and acceptance was far from over, but we would face it together. The aftermath of our encounter with Robert left a bitter taste in my mouth. It was just a few days later when I decided to visit a high-end store, hoping to buy a gift for Luke. Despite my own struggles with health, I was determined to find something meaningful for my son. The store, with its polished marble floors and gleaming glass displays, was the epitome of luxury. I wheeled my way through the entrance, my wheelchair moving smoothly over the polished surface. As I browsed the elegant selections, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't long before I realized that Robert was there, engaging in conversation with a sales associate. His presence was unmistakable, his authoritative voice cutting through the ambient noise of the store. "Hello there." Robert's voice dripped with condescension as he approached me. "I didn't expect to see you here." I looked up, trying to keep my voice steady. "Good afternoon, Robert." He glanced at me, his eyes narrowing with a hint of disdain. "Out shopping for yourself, are we?" I ignored the jibe and focused on the display in front of me, selecting a sleek watch that I thought Luke would appreciate. Robert's presence felt intrusive, but I hoped to avoid further conflict. The sales associate, a young woman with a polite smile, approached. "May I help you with anything?" "Yes," I said, gesturing toward the watch. "I'd like to purchase this." Robert's gaze remained fixed on me, his expression reflecting both amusement and contempt. "A bit of an extravagant choice, don't you think?" Before I could respond, Robert added, "Do you even know how to appreciate fine things? Or is this just another attempt to impress?" The sales associate's smile faltered slightly, her discomfort evident. "Sir, I'll assist Mr. Walker with his purchase." Robert's mocking laughter followed me as I made my way to the checkout. His presence lingered like a shadow, and I felt a deep sense of humiliation. As I finished the transaction and began to leave, Robert's parting shot came. "Enjoy your purchase," he called after me, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You might not get another chance to indulge yourself." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. The confrontation at the store had left me feeling both wounded and enraged. As I wheeled myself out of the store, I overheard a snippet of Robert's conversation with the sales associate. "I'm afraid that man might cause trouble for the store," Robert said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Keep an eye on him." I felt a pang of anger and sadness. Robert's disdain was palpable, and his behavior was a stark reminder of the challenges we faced. As I left the store, the weight of the encounter settled heavily on my shoulders. Later that evening, I spoke with Luke about the incident. He was preparing dinner, his movements brisk and focused as he worked. "Luke," I began, my voice weary, "I had another run-in with Robert today." Luke looked up, his expression shifting from concern to frustration. "What happened?" I recounted the events, detailing Robert's mocking comments and the discomfort I felt. Luke's face grew red with anger. "That's unacceptable," he said, his voice tight. "He's crossing a line. I'm not going to let him get away with this." I placed a hand on his shoulder, trying to offer comfort. "I know, son, but we need to handle this carefully. His behavior is showing us just how much we need to stand up for ourselves." Luke nodded, his determination clear. "We'll find a way to deal with this. I'm not backing down." As we continued our conversation, I could see the resolve in Luke's eyes. The road ahead would be difficult, but his unwavering support gave me hope. Together, we would face the challenges that lay ahead, determined to overcome the obstacles Robert's arrogance had set in our path. The day of the marriage proposal meeting had arrived, and the tension was palpable. Luke and I had spent the morning preparing ourselves, despite the lingering unease from our previous encounters with Robert. Ella's parents had invited us to their opulent home for the formal discussion. As we approached their mansion, with its grand entrance and manicured lawns, I could sense Luke's nervousness. I, too, felt a knot of anxiety in my chest, but I steeled myself for what was to come. Ella's mother greeted us at the door with a warm smile, though her eyes betrayed a hint of apprehension. "Welcome, Mr. Walker, Luke," It's so good to see you both. Thank you for having us, Luke said, his voice steady but tinged with nerves. We were led into a spacious living room, furnished with elegant, albeit intimidating, decor. Robert was already there, seated in a high-backed leather chair that seemed to emphasize his authority. He glanced up as we entered, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to barely concealed disdain when he saw me. "Mr. Walker," Robert said with a forced politeness, "I see you've made it. I trust you're comfortable." I nodded, trying to maintain my composure. "Thank you, Robert. I appreciate your hospitality." The conversation started off civilly, with Luke and Ella sharing their love story and future plans. Robert, however, made no effort to hide his skepticism. "So, Luke," Robert began, his tone dripping with condescension, "how do you plan to support Ella? I assume your current job isn't exactly lucrative." Luke's face flushed, but he held his ground. "I'm committed to making a future with Ella. My work is stable, and I'm always looking for new opportunities." Robert's gaze shifted to me, his eyes narrowing. "And you, Mr. Walker, how do you feel about your son's future?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I believe Luke is capable and hardworking. I support his decision to marry Ella." Robert's lips curled into a smirk. "Interesting. I've heard you're retired now. It must be quite a challenge to adapt from being a CEO to, what is it you do now? Manage your investments." "Retirement hasn't changed my belief in my son's abilities," I replied firmly. Robert's expression grew darker, his disdain palpable. "I suppose it's commendable that you support your son. But I have to ask, does your lack of formal education bother you? Or is it something you've come to terms with?" The insult was thinly veiled, and I could see Luke's frustration growing. Before we could respond, Robert's demeanor shifted dramatically. He abruptly stood and turned to Ella. "Ella," he said harshly, "I can't allow you to be with someone whose family is, let's say, less refined. This is a mistake." Ella's eyes widened in shock. "Dad, what are you saying? This isn't fair." Robert's face hardened as he continued. "It's not just about fairness. It's about making the right choices for your future." The tension reached a breaking point. Luke stepped forward, his voice trembling with anger. "How can you say that? We love each other. You're being completely unreasonable." Robert's temper flared. "You don't understand what's best for Ella. You're not good enough for her." Before anyone could react, Robert's hand shot out, striking Luke across the face. The room fell into stunned silence. Luke stumbled back, clutching his cheek, his face pale with shock and pain. "Dad!" Ella cried out, rushing to Luke's side. "How could you?" Robert's face was flushed with anger, his eyes gleaming with a twisted sense of satisfaction. "If you continue this farce, you'll regret it." Ella's mother looked horrified, but remained silent, clearly torn between her husband and her daughter. The situation had escalated beyond anything I had anticipated. I wheeled myself forward, trying to diffuse the chaos. "Robert, this is unacceptable. We're leaving." Ella helped Luke to his feet, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'm so sorry, Luke. This is not what I wanted." As we made our way to the door, the atmosphere in the room was charged with unresolved tension. The confrontation had left a deep scar, not only on Luke's face, but on the relationship between our families. The damage was done, and the future of Luke and Ella's relationship hung in the balance. The drive back home was quiet, the weight of the day's events settling heavily on us. Luke's silence spoke volumes, his hurt and frustration evident in the way he stared out the window. I reached over and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this," I said softly. "We have to." Luke nodded, though his expression remained troubled. The battle was far from over, and the road ahead was fraught with challenges. But as we faced the fallout from Robert's outburst, we knew that our fight was just beginning. The confrontation with Robert had left us all reeling. Luke's face was still bruised, and the emotional toll was even heavier. As we sat in the living room, trying to process what had just happened, I knew that it was time to take action. The way Robert had treated us, particularly his public humiliation of Luke, was unacceptable, and I was determined to make him face the consequences. I called for an emergency meeting of our financial advisors and legal team. As I sat in my study, preparing for the confrontation ahead, I couldn't help but think about the last words Robert had spat at us. His arrogance had gone too far, and it was time to put an end to it. When the meeting was underway, my lawyer, Ms. Roberts, and my financial advisor, Mr. Thompson, joined me at the conference table. The room was dimly lit, and the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. "Jonathan, what's this about?" Ms. Roberts asked, looking up from her notebook. "You sounded urgent on the phone." I took a deep breath, my mind focused on the task at hand. "I need to call an emergency shareholders meeting for Robert's company. His behavior yesterday was not only unprofessional but completely unacceptable." Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. "You mean the incident with your son and his fiancée's father? I understand it was upsetting, but are you sure this is the right course of action?" "I'm sure," I replied firmly. "Robert's conduct was disgraceful. We need to show that there are consequences for such behavior. I'm a major shareholder in his company, and I intend to use my influence to address this issue." Ms. Roberts nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We'll need to gather evidence and present a solid case. Do you have any documentation or witnesses to support your claim?" "Yes," I said, opening a folder filled with documents. "I have security footage from the store incident that will prove Robert's behavior. It's crucial that we present this evidence at the meeting." Mr. Thompson looked at the footage, his expression turning serious. "This could make or break our case. Let's ensure everything is in order for the shareholders' meeting." The next day, we convened the emergency shareholders' meeting. The boardroom was filled with an air of expectation as I prepared to address the shareholders. Robert, who had been notified of the meeting but unaware of its purpose, entered the room with a confident stride. His expression turned to one of confusion when he saw the assembled crowd and the intense atmosphere. "Jonathan," Robert said, forcing a smile, "what's all this about?" "Robert," I began, standing up to face him, "we're here today because of your unacceptable behavior towards my son and his fiancée. Your actions were not only unprofessional but deeply disrespectful." Robert's face hardened. "Is this some kind of joke? I've been running this company for years. I don't see what this has to do with anything." "Let me show you," I said, nodding to Ms. Roberts. She stepped forward and started playing the security footage from the store incident on a large screen. The footage clearly showed Robert's mocking behavior, his condescending remarks, and the way he treated me and Luke. The room fell silent as the footage played out, capturing Robert's unprofessional conduct in stark detail. When the video ended, the room was filled with murmurs of disbelief and disapproval. One of the board members, Mr. Harris, spoke up. "This is outrageous. I had no idea Robert was behaving like this. We cannot condone this type of conduct." Robert's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "This is ridiculous. You're trying to sabotage me over a personal grudge." "This isn't about a personal grudge," I said calmly. "It's about maintaining standards and professionalism within the company. Your actions have reflected poorly on all of us." The shareholders began to discuss the matter, and it quickly became clear that the sentiment was turning against Robert. There was a growing consensus that his behavior was unacceptable and that he needed to be held accountable. After a heated discussion, the shareholders voted on a motion to remove Robert from his position. The vote was overwhelming in favor of his dismissal. Robert's face contorted with fury as he realized the gravity of the situation. "This isn't over," Robert spat, glaring at me. "You'll regret this." "Perhaps," I said, maintaining my composure, "but it's important to uphold the values and integrity of the company." As Robert was escorted out of the boardroom, the atmosphere was charged with a sense of resolution. The shareholders were relieved to have addressed the issue, and ensured that such behavior would not be tolerated in the future. The meeting concluded with a sense of accomplishment and justice. Luke and Ella were deeply grateful, though the road ahead remained uncertain. But as we left the boardroom, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We had taken a stand and made it clear that respect and integrity mattered above all else. The fallout from the shareholders' meeting had been swift and severe. Robert's removal was a dramatic turn of events, and the company was left grappling with the immediate consequences of his dismissal. But the resolution was far from complete. The true impact of the meeting would hinge on how well we could navigate the aftermath. I had arranged a follow-up meeting with the remaining board members to discuss the next steps for the company and address any lingering issues. As I prepared for the meeting, my mind kept drifting back to the confrontation and the way it had altered the course of our lives. Luke and Ella, though deeply shaken, were relieved that justice had been served. The boardroom was once again filled with the key figures of the company. Ms. Roberts and Mr. Thompson were by my side, ready to provide legal and financial support. The air was thick with a sense of resolution and anticipation. As the meeting began, I addressed the board members. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We've taken a significant step today by addressing Robert's behavior, but we must now focus on ensuring the company remains stable and on track. Mr. Harris, a senior board member, spoke up. Jonathan, while Robert's actions were inexcusable, we need to discuss the next steps. How do we move forward and rebuild the company's reputation? I nodded. We need to implement a series of changes to restore trust and maintain high standards of professionalism. First and foremost, we must ensure that Robert's removal does not leave a vacuum in leadership. We need a strong interim leader who can guide us through this transition. Ms. Roberts interjected. We've also reviewed the footage and documentation from the previous day. There are additional legal considerations and potential liabilities we should address to prevent further issues. I took a deep breath. I'm ready to discuss the details and ensure we have a clear path forward. The evidence we presented not only highlighted Robert's misconduct, but also underscored the need for accountability and transparency. As we reviewed the security footage once more, the board members scrutinized the evidence with a mix of concern and resolution. The footage, which had previously led to Robert's dismissal, was now serving as a reminder of why we needed to uphold the company's values. One of the board members, Ms. Lawson, raised a crucial point. Jonathan, given the severity of the situation, should we consider a public statement to address the incident and reassure our stakeholders? Yes, I agreed. A well-crafted public statement will help us manage the narrative and demonstrate our commitment to ethical standards. We need to communicate that the company remains dedicated to its core values and will not tolerate any form of misconduct. The discussion continued with a focus on crafting the statement and planning the transition process. As the meeting progressed, I felt a sense of relief knowing that we were taking the right steps to ensure the company's integrity. Later that evening, as I was reviewing the final draft of the public statement, Luke and Ella came to visit. They looked visibly relieved, though the stress of the past few days was still evident. "Dad, thank you for everything," Luke said, his voice tinged with gratitude. "I don't know what we would have done without your support. I'm just glad we were able to make things right," I replied, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Robert's behavior was unacceptable, and it was important to hold him accountable. Ella nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and uncertainty. "I'm still in shock over everything that happened. But I feel better knowing that we've taken a stand and done what was necessary." "I understand," I said gently. "It's been a difficult journey, but it's important to remember that we've stood up for what's right. The company will recover, and so will we." As we discussed the next steps and the future, it became clear that the resolution of this conflict was just the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. The company would move forward with a renewed focus on professionalism and integrity, while our personal lives would also gradually return to a sense of normalcy. The experience had taught us all valuable lessons about resilience, accountability, and the importance of standing up for what is right. As we looked ahead, we knew that the road to recovery would be challenging, but we were ready to face it together. The final resolution had not only brought justice, but also set the stage for a brighter future. With the company on a path to recovery and our personal lives beginning to heal, we were ready to embrace the new opportunities that lay ahead. The aftermath of Robert's dismissal rippled through the company and our lives in ways we hadn't anticipated. The immediate fallout was palpable, with employees and stakeholders reacting to the dramatic shift in leadership and the public scrutiny of the company's values. The once stable environment was now a whirlwind of uncertainty and adjustment. The boardroom, now a center of intense activity, was filled with meetings and strategic discussions aimed at managing the crisis. Despite the turmoil, I remained resolute in ensuring that the company's integrity was upheld and that we moved forward with a clear plan. One morning, I met with Ms. Roberts and Mr. Thompson to review the latest developments. The tension was evident in their expressions. Ms. Roberts started, "Jonathan, the media coverage has been intense. We've been fielding questions about our leadership changes and how we plan to address the issues stemming from Robert's conduct." Mr. Thompson added, "We're also facing a backlash from some of our major clients who are concerned about the company's direction. We need to reassure them about our commitment to maintaining high standards." I took a deep breath. We need to be proactive in our response. Let's draft a detailed statement addressing the steps we're taking to ensure stability and transparency. It's crucial that we demonstrate our commitment to ethical practices and rebuild trust. As we worked on the statement, the weight of the situation settled heavily on my shoulders. The challenges we faced were not only about restoring the company's reputation, but also about navigating the personal impacts on our lives. Later that day, Luke and Ella came over to my house. Their faces were etched with concern, and the stress of the recent events was evident. "Dad, how are we supposed to deal with all of this?" Luke asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "The company's problems are spilling over into our personal lives, and I'm struggling to keep up." Ella, trying to offer support, added, "It's overwhelming. I feel like every time we make progress, something else comes up that throws us off course." I nodded, understanding their frustration. "I know it's tough right now, but we need to stay focused on the bigger picture. We've faced adversity before, and we'll get through this as well. It's important to remember why we took these steps in the first place, to stand up for what's right." Luke sighed. "I just hope the company can recover from this. It's hard to see things from the perspective of a positive outcome when everything seems so chaotic." "I understand," I said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're in a difficult spot, but the changes we're making are necessary for long-term stability. It might take time, but we'll emerge stronger." The conversation was a reminder of the personal toll the crisis had taken on us. Despite the assurances, the impact of the fallout was far-reaching, affecting not just the company, but our relationships and well-being. In the days that followed, the fallout continued to manifest in various ways. Employee morale was low, with many feeling unsettled by the sudden leadership change and the media scrutiny. The company's stock prices fluctuated, and there were concerns about losing key clients and partners. I spent many hours in the office, working closely with the interim leadership team to stabilize operations and address the concerns of our clients and stakeholders. The road to recovery was long and fraught with challenges, but we were committed to navigating it with integrity and resilience. During this period, I also made an effort to stay connected with Luke and Ella, offering support and guidance as they faced their own personal struggles. Our conversations were a mix of strategy and emotional support as we worked together to overcome the difficulties that had arisen from the crisis. One evening, as we sat together discussing the latest updates, Ella expressed her gratitude. "Jonathan, I know this has been incredibly challenging for you. I want to thank you for everything you've done. Your strength and determination have been a source of support for us." I looked at her and Luke, feeling a deep sense of pride. We're all in this together. The road ahead may be tough, but we've shown that we can face adversity and come out stronger. Let's continue to support each other and keep moving forward. The fallout from Robert's dismissal had been a harsh reality check, but it also served as a reminder of the strength and resilience we possessed. As we faced the challenges ahead, we knew that our commitment to integrity and justice would guide us through the storm and lead us to a brighter future. As the dust settled from the upheaval caused by Robert's dismissal, the path to recovery became clearer. The company was slowly finding its footing, and life was gradually returning to a new sense of normalcy. For me, it was a time of reflection and planning, focusing on rebuilding and moving forward with renewed purpose. In the early morning light, I sat in my home office, reviewing the latest company reports and strategizing for the upcoming quarter. The work was demanding but necessary to ensure the company's stability and growth. The challenges we faced were not just about restoring our reputation, but also about fostering a culture of respect and ethical leadership. Luke and Ella had been instrumental in supporting me through this transition. Their strength and optimism were a beacon of hope during these tumultuous times. One evening, they came over to discuss their plans for the future and how they were adapting to the changes. Luke began, "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about where we go from here. I know the company's recovery will take time, but I want to be proactive in helping with the transition. I've got some ideas for new initiatives that could help us regain our footing and rebuild relationships with clients." Ella added, "We've also been discussing how we can contribute to fostering a positive work environment. It's clear that we need to prioritize a culture of respect and transparency moving forward." I looked at them with appreciation. "Your commitment is exactly what we need. The company's future depends on our ability to adapt and innovate while maintaining our core values. Let's focus on implementing these new initiatives and creating a supportive environment for everyone involved." Later that week, we held a meeting with the newly appointed leadership team to discuss the company's strategic direction. The mood in the room was one of cautious optimism, with a shared commitment to steering the company toward a positive future. Ms. Roberts started the meeting. "Jonathan, we've been reviewing the feedback from our clients and stakeholders. It's clear that while there's still some skepticism, there's also a strong desire to see the company succeed. We need to demonstrate our commitment to positive change and transparency." Mr. Thompson chimed in, "We've also been working on a revised code of conduct that reflects our renewed focus on ethical leadership and respect. It's important that we communicate these changes clearly to our employees and clients." I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Let's ensure that our message is consistent and that we're taking concrete steps to address the concerns that have been raised. We need to rebuild trust and confidence in our leadership and our company. As the meeting concluded, I felt a sense of relief. We had a clear plan in place and a team dedicated to moving the company forward. It was a positive step in overcoming the challenges we had faced. In the weeks that followed, Luke and Ella continued to support the company's recovery, working on various projects and initiatives to strengthen client relationships and improve internal processes. Their contributions were invaluable, and their dedication was evident in the progress we were making. One evening, as we gathered for dinner, Luke shared some good news. "Dad, we've successfully launched the new client outreach program, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Clients are starting to see the changes we're making and are expressing their support." Ella smiled and added, "We're also seeing improvements in employee morale. The new initiatives and the focus on a respectful work environment are making a real difference." I looked at them with pride. I'm proud of what we've accomplished. Moving forward, it's important that we continue to stay true to our values and remain committed to positive change. The road ahead will have its challenges, but with your support and dedication, I'm confident we'll navigate it successfully. As the evening drew to a close, I reflected on the journey we had been through. The challenges had tested us in ways we hadn't anticipated, but they had also strengthened our resolve and brought us closer together. Moving forward, we were more determined than ever to build a future grounded in integrity, respect, and resilience. The road to recovery was ongoing, but with each step, we were making progress. The experience had been a harsh lesson, but it had also shown us the strength of our character and the power of unity. As we continued to move forward, we did so with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to creating a positive and lasting impact.